All right then, ready to get your head around AI. We've got loads to cover today, a proper crash course going from what AI actually is to how it might shape the future. Don't worry though, we'll break it all down bit by bit.
Yeah, definitely AI is everywhere these days, even if we don't always realize it.
Okay, so first things first, what exactly is artificial intelligence? I mean, we're not just talking about, robots taking over the world, are we?
Well, hopefully not just yet, but it is about making machines, well, smarter, getting them to, I suppose, think a bit more like humans do, learning, reasoning, solving problems.
So more than just, say, a robot doing the dishes then. Although, I wouldn't say no to a robot chef, to be honest.
Uh-huh, maybe one day. But yeah, it's really about trying to replicate how our brains work, like understanding language, spotting patterns, making decisions, all those sorts of things.
Right, I see. So how do they actually make that happen? How do you teach a machine to think, I guess?
It all boils down to algorithms and data. Imagine you're baking a cake. You've got your ingredients, that's the data, and then you've got the recipe, that's the algorithm. The algorithm tells the machine how to use that data to learn.
Okay, I like that. A nice, tasty analogy.
Mm.
So it's like giving the computer the instructions, and then it just keeps practicing with loads and loads of data until it gets good at, well, whatever it's trying to do.
Exactly. A good example is Google search. Every time you type something in, Google's AI is learning from your search, so it can get better at predicting what you're looking for and giving you better results.
Oh, wow, that's actually a bit creepy when you think about it. All those years I thought I was just searching, but I was training an AI this whole time.
It is a bit, isn't it? And that's just one example. Think about things like facial recognition on your phone, spam filters, even all those targeted adverts you see online. It's all powered by AI.
Blimey. AI really is everywhere then. Okay, so let's dig a bit deeper. So what about this machine learning thing? Is that just a fancy way of saying AI, or is it something different?
It's a specific type of AI, really. So with machine learning, or ML for short, we're not programming every single step for the machine. We're giving it the tools to learn from data itself without, being explicitly told what to do in every scenario.
Ah, so instead of telling the machine exactly what to do, step by step, you're giving it the ability to figure things out on its own, like a more general set of guidelines.
Precisely. It's a bit like instead of giving someone a fish, you teach them how to fish, then they can feed themselves. It's more sustainable.
I like that, much more sustainable. So
Yeah.
how many different, I guess, ways are there for a machine to learn?
Well, there are three main types of machine learning: supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and reinforcement learning.
Right, let's break those down a bit. What's supervised learning all about then?
Supervised learning is a bit like having a teacher in a classroom. So we give the machine labeled data, which means each bit of data has a tag or category.
So if you were training it to recognize cats in pictures, you'd show it loads of pictures, some labeled cat and some labeled not a cat, and it would learn from that.
Exactly. And it can then use those examples to figure out how to tell the difference based on, the patterns in the data. It's really useful for things like image recognition, spam filtering, all sorts.
That's fascinating. Okay, so what about unsupervised learning then? How does that work if there's no, well, teacher or labels?
That's where it gets really interesting. It's like giving the machine a massive jigsaw puzzle, but there's no picture on the box. It's got all this data, but no labels or categories to guide it. The AI has to work out the structure and patterns all by itself.
That sounds really tough. How does it even know where to start if it doesn't know what it's looking for?
It uses clever things like clustering, which means grouping similar data points together. So imagine trying to sort a huge pile of Lego bricks by color, but you don't know what the final model is supposed to look like.
So it's like the AI is a detective, trying to find hidden connections and patterns, but without any clues to help it along.
Exactly. And, it's great for things like understanding customer behavior, spotting those weird anomalies in data, even creating new music.
Okay, that's pretty amazing. And then we have reinforcement learning. Is that anything like giving a dog a treat when it does something good?
You're closer than you think. Reinforcement learning really is all about trial and error. It's like teaching a dog a new trick, yeah. But instead of treats, the AI gets rewards or penalties based on what it does.
Ah, so it's like a game. And the AI is learning the best strategies to get the highest score.
You got it. This is how they train AI for things like playing games, controlling robots, even making decisions in the stock market.
So we've got these three different types of machine learning, each with its own way of, well, learning. It's all very impressive, but I suppose there must be downsides to it too, right?
Well, yeah, like most things, there are always challenges. One of the big ones is data quality. If you feed the AI biased or inaccurate data, the results you get will be rubbish. It's like trying to bake a cake with rotten eggs. It's just not going to work.
Makes sense. Rubbish in, rubbish out, as they say.
Exactly. And another thing is something called overfitting. This happens when the AI gets a bit too good at learning from the specific data it's trained on, and it becomes too specific. So imagine a student who memorizes all the answers for a test, but doesn't actually understand the subject.
Right. They might pass the test, but wouldn't actually be able to solve new problems or apply what they've learned in real life.
Precisely. The AI gets too fixated on what it's seen before and can't generalize.
Okay, so it's all about finding that balance then between becoming really good at something specific, but also being flexible enough to handle new information.
Yeah, that's the tricky bit. And that's what makes AI development so interesting, trying to create something that's incredibly powerful but also adaptable.
So we've covered AI in general and these different ways that machines can learn, but there's also this deep learning thing I keep hearing about. Is that part of machine learning, or is it completely separate?
Deep learning is a type of machine learning, but it's become so, I guess, popular and powerful in its own right that people often talk about it separately. It's all about these artificial neural networks, which are actually inspired by how our own brains are structured.
Neural networks. Okay, now you're losing me a bit. How do those work?
Imagine a network of, well, interconnected nodes. Think of it like a big web of connections. You've got an input layer where data enters, then these hidden layers where the magic happens, and then finally an output layer where you get the results.
So each layer does its own little bit of analysis on the data and then passes it on to the next layer. So it's like building up a more and more detailed understanding.
Exactly. And the deep part of deep learning is all about these hidden layers. It can have loads and loads of them, which lets it find really complex patterns in the data.
So more layers means a smarter AI then.
You could say that, yeah. Deep learning has led to some of the biggest breakthroughs, especially in computer vision and natural language processing, which we'll talk about a bit later.
All right, bring on the breakthroughs. But can you give me some real-world examples of how deep learning is being used? I mean, it's hard to imagine how all these layers and nodes actually translate into, I don't know, something you can actually see.
Okay, well, think about Tesla's autopilot system. It's not just following a set route. It's actually analyzing the road in real time. Identifying obstacles and making decisions about steering, braking, all that. And it's all thanks to deep learning algorithms processing all the data coming from the car's cameras.
So the car is basically learning to drive itself, using deep learning to actually understand the world around it.
Exactly. It's still under development, of course, but it shows what deep learning can do.
That's incredible. But I guess there must be challenges too, right? I mean, it all sounds almost too good to be true.
Of course. For one, it needs a huge amount of computing power to train these massive neural networks. We're talking days, weeks even, running on specialized hardware, which is not cheap.
So not exactly something you can do on your home computer then.
Not really, no. And another thing is this, well, black box element of deep learning. It's hard to understand exactly how these networks are making decisions, even for the experts sometimes.
So we might know that the AI makes the right decision, but we don't necessarily know why it made that decision.
That's right. And this lack of transparency can be a worry, especially in fields like healthcare, where we really need to understand how those decisions are being made.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's one thing for AI to pick what music I listen to, but quite another if it's making life or death decisions.
Exactly. Transparency and accountability are going to become even more important as AI gets more powerful.
Okay, so we've talked about AI, different types of machine learning, and the wonders of deep learning. What about natural language processing? Where does that fit in?
Natural language processing, NLP, that's all about getting computers to understand and use our language, human language. It's what lets you talk to your smartphone, translate languages online, all that.
So basically teaching computers to speak our language.
Exactly. It involves things like analyzing text, translating languages, generating speech that actually sounds realistic.
Right, like when I ask my smart speaker to play a song or use Google Translate to figure out what's on a menu when I'm on holiday, that's all NLP.
You got it. But you're right, human language is complex. It's full of, well, double meanings and slang, all sorts of nuances.
So how do they manage that? I mean, it must be incredibly difficult to teach a computer to understand all those subtleties.
It is. One of the big challenges in NLP is ambiguity. Words can have different meanings depending on the context. Take the word bank, for example. It could be a financial institution or the edge of a river.
Hmm.
The AI needs to understand the surrounding words, the whole context, to figure out the right meaning.
Right, so it's not just about individual words, it's about understanding how they all fit together to make a sentence, a paragraph, even a whole conversation.
Exactly. And another big challenge is dealing with, well, bias. Because these language models are trained on huge amounts of text, and that text reflects, the biases that exist in society.
So if the AI is only ever exposed to, say, text that uses gender stereotypes, it might end up perpetuating those stereotypes itself.
Unfortunately, yes. It's a big issue that researchers are trying to address, but it's complicated.
Sounds like NLP is really powerful, but it's got some serious ethical implications too.
Yeah, I think that's true for a lot of AI. As it becomes more powerful, we have to be very careful about how we use it.
Okay, so we've gone from general AI and machine learning to deep learning and NLP. But there's one more buzzword I keep hearing, generative AI. What's that all about?
Generative AI is one of the most exciting, I think, and fastest growing areas of AI. It's all about using AI to create new content, whether it's text, images, music, you name it.
So AI is becoming creative. That's pretty mind-blowing. But how does it actually work? Is it just copying things, or can it actually come up with original ideas?
It's definitely more than just copying. It uses some really clever techniques to, well, learn patterns from existing data and then create new stuff that follows those patterns but is still unique.
So it's a bit like teaching an AI to paint by showing it thousands of paintings, and then it starts creating its own paintings based on what it's learned, but without directly copying any one painting.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. One of the most famous examples is DALE, which was made by OpenAI. It can create these incredibly realistic and imaginative images just from you giving it a text description.
So if I typed in a cat riding a unicorn on the moon, DLA could actually make an image of that.
It really could. And it's not just about making, funny pictures. Generative AI could totally change fields like art, design, even scientific discovery.
It's incredible. But I'm guessing there are also potential downsides here, right? I mean, what's to stop people using it to create fake news? Or those deep fake videos where you can't even tell what's real anymore?
That's one of the big worries, absolutely. The potential for misuse is definitely there, and it's something we need to think about carefully.
So as this technology gets more and more powerful, we need to figure out how to control it and make sure it's used ethically.
Exactly. And there are other ethical questions too, like who actually owns something that an AI creates? If it makes a piece of art or music, is it the person who designed the AI, the person who typed in the instructions, or even the AI itself?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, it really feels like we're entering a whole new world where the lines between, human creativity and AI are becoming blurred.
It is. It's both exciting and a bit unsettling. But now that we've talked about AI understanding language, how about we move on to how it can see? That's where computer vision comes in, right?
Right, computer vision. So that's all about giving computers the ability to actually see the world like we do.
Exactly. It's what lets your phone recognize your face, self-driving cars to navigate, doctors to use AI for things like diagnosing diseases from scans.
So are we basically giving computers eyes?
Kind of. It uses things like convolutional neural networks, or CNNs, which analyze images and video. It can identify objects, recognize faces, even understand what's happening in a scene.
Okay, so when Facebook suggests tagging me in a photo, or I use Google Lens to find out what a building is, that's all computer vision doing its thing.
That's right. But getting computers to see the world as well as we do, that's a huge challenge.
Yeah, I bet. What kind of challenges are there?
Well, one is dealing with different lighting conditions. Our eyes are amazing at adapting to different light levels, but cameras and AI struggle with things like low light or shadows.
So it's like trying to recognize someone's face in a really dark room.
Exactly. And the sheer amount of visual information that needs processing is another hurdle. The world's full of complex scenes, moving objects. It takes a lot of power to make sense of it all, especially in real time.
It sounds like computer vision is pushing the limits of what AI can do. But what about, actually interacting with the physical world? That's where robots come in, I guess.
You got it. Robotics is all about building machines that can physically move around and interact with their surroundings. And AI plays a crucial role in making them intelligent and autonomous.
So not just those big industrial robots you see in factories then?
Not anymore. Robotics has come a long way. We've now got robots performing surgery, exploring other planets, even helping out with chores around the house.
Wow, I'm starting to feel like I'm living in a science fiction film here. But how exactly does AI make a robot, well, intelligent?
Robots use a combination of sensors, AI models, and actuators. So sensors like cameras collect information about the world, AI models process that information, and actuators like motors and things let the robot actually move.
So the AI is basically the brain telling the robot what to do and how to do it.
Exactly. There's this robot dog made by Boston Dynamics called Spot. It's designed for things like inspections in hazardous environments. It can navigate tricky terrain, even climb stairs and open doors.
A robot dog. That is straight out of science fiction. But I imagine building advanced robots like that must be incredibly difficult and expensive.
You're right, it is. One of the biggest challenges is adaptability. Robots are great at repetitive tasks in structured environments like a factory, but put them in a messy house, and they struggle.
So telling a robot to put together a car on a production line is one thing, but telling it to tidy my bedroom would be a whole other story.
Pretty much. The cost is also a major factor. Building and using advanced robots is still incredibly expensive.
All right, well, we've covered a lot, haven't we? We've gone from the basics of AI and how machines learn to things like deep learning, computer vision, even robots. It's clear that AI is changing the world already and incredibly fast. But with all this power, I guess we need to think about the ethical side of things too, right?
You're absolutely right. Building these amazing technologies is one thing, but we need to make sure they're used for good, not for causing harm. Ethics should be a part of everything we do with AI.
So it's not just about building cool tech, it's about the impact it has on people and society
Yeah.
and making sure it reflects our values.
Exactly. We want AI to benefit humanity, not make things worse. One key thing is fairness. We have to make sure that AI systems aren't biased or discriminatory.
Right. We don't want them reinforcing existing inequalities or creating new ones.
Absolutely. And accountability is crucial too. If an AI system makes a mistake, who's responsible? It's not always clear-cut.
So it can be a bit of a gray area when it comes to figuring out who's to blame if something goes wrong.
It can be, yeah. And then there's transparency, being able to understand how AI makes decisions, especially when they have a big impact on our lives. Like we said, this is particularly difficult with deep learning.
So we can't just blindly trust that the AI is doing the right thing. We need to be able to see how it's reaching its conclusions.
Exactly. And of course, we need to remember data privacy. AI relies on vast amounts of data, and that data needs to be handled carefully and ethically.
So people's privacy needs to be protected, and we need to prevent that data from being used in the wrong way.
Absolutely. AI has so much potential, but we have to make sure it's developed and used in a way that benefits everyone.
It feels like we're at a bit of a crossroads then,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to choose the right path to make sure we're using AI for good.
I agree. And it's not just a conversation for the tech experts, it's something everyone needs to be involved in. So where were we? Yes, thinking about how AI is creeping into every corner of our lives.
Really is quite remarkable, isn't it? I mean, AI isn't some, I don't know, futuristic fantasy anymore. It's just like they're part of our everyday lives, even if we don't always notice it.
That's so true. It's become so integrated, so seamless. We kind of just take it for granted now. Just think about something as simple as listening to music.
You're right. I mean, I'm sure most of our listeners use Spotify or, I don't know, some other streaming service. And have you ever noticed how they always seem to know exactly what you want to hear next, even before you do?
It's uncanny, isn't it? Sometimes I'll be thinking, ooh, I'd love to hear something, a bit like this. And then bang, the next song that comes on is exactly the kind of thing I was after.
It's like they can read your mind. So how do they do that?
It's AI, of course. Those platforms use something called recommendation systems. They're constantly crunching through tons of data, not just about the music, but about your listening habits too. What you skip, what you save, what you listen to over and over again, even things like the time of day or where you are.
So it's not just matching songs based on, say, genre or artist. It's actually building up a whole profile of me as a listener.
Exactly. And the more you use it, the more data it has to work with. Every skip, every playlist you create, it all feeds back into the system. It's like having a personal DJ who knows your taste better than you do.
That's a great way to put it. And it's not just music, is it? Think about virtual assistants like Siri or Alexa.
Oh, I know. I practically live on my smart speaker these days. Setting timers, checking the weather, you name it.
Well, that's natural language processing, or NLP, at work. Remember, we talked about that earlier. These virtual assistants can actually understand what we're saying, respond in a natural way, even predict what we might need.
It is handy, isn't it? Just being able to say, hey, Siri, remind me to, or Alexa, play some, whatever you fancy. It really does feel like having a personal assistant.
It does. But like we said before, we have to think about the downsides too. I mean, these devices are in our homes, listening to our conversations, learning about our habits. It does make you wonder about privacy.
Absolutely. We're giving them access to so much personal information. It's definitely important to be aware of that and to understand how that data is being used.
Right, it's about being informed, isn't it?
Yeah.
Knowing what we're sharing, who has access to it, all of that.
Exactly. We have to be, savvy about these things.
Okay, so let's think about the future then. We've talked about how AI is already impacting our lives, but what about the bigger picture? Where is all of this heading?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? AI is changing so fast, it's hard to predict exactly what's next. But there are definitely some interesting trends emerging. One thing that's getting a lot of attention is sustainability.
So as these AI systems get more complex, they need more power to run, which isn't exactly great for the environment.
That's right. So researchers are working on making AI greener, developing more efficient algorithms, finding ways to reduce the energy consumption.
That makes a lot of sense. What about things like personalization? Is AI going to become even more tailored to our individual needs?
Definitely. I think we're only just scratching the surface there. At the moment, we see it in things like entertainment, shopping, healthcare. But imagine a future where everything is personalized, from your education to your medical treatment.
It's like having an AI assistant that knows you better than you know yourself and can adapt everything to your specific preferences and needs.
Exactly. And it's not just about individual experiences either. AI is being used to tackle some huge global problems, things like climate change and disease outbreaks.
Right, so it's not just about making our lives easier or more entertaining. It's about using this incredible technology to solve really important problems that affect everyone.
Absolutely. One great example is DeepMind's AlphaFold. It's an AI that can predict the 3D structure of proteins really accurately.
Okay, and why is that so important?
Well, proteins are the building blocks of life, and understanding their structure is essential for developing new drugs and treatments for diseases.
So AlphaFold could revolutionize medicine, helping us develop new therapies for all sorts of diseases.
Exactly. It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
It is. But I suppose, as with everything, there are potential downsides too. We can't just ignore those, right? I mean, as AI becomes more advanced, we need to think about things like regulation and ethics. And what about the impact on jobs?
Those are all valid concerns. We can't just blindly embrace this technology without considering the consequences. We need to have those difficult conversations about, how we manage the risks, how we ensure fairness, how we prepare for the changes AI might bring to the workforce.
So it's not just about the technology itself. It's about the choices we make as a society, the guidelines we put in place, and the conversations we have about the kind of future we want to create with AI.
Exactly. The future isn't set in stone. It's something we're all shaping through our decisions and our actions.
Right, and the more informed we are, the better equipped we'll be to navigate this pretty incredible and rapidly changing world of AI.
Well, that was quite a journey, wasn't it? From, the nitty-gritty of algorithms and data to the big picture stuff like robots and what the future might hold. We really covered a lot in this deep dive into AI.
We did, and it's just incredible how much AI is already impacting so many different areas of our lives and how quickly it's all developing.
It really is. And I think, as we've been saying, it's not just about the technology itself. It's about understanding the potential consequences, making sure we're using it responsibly, thinking about ethics.
Absolutely. It's such a powerful tool, and like any tool, it can be used in good ways and bad ways. It's down to us, really, to make sure it's being used to make the world a better place.
I completely agree. Hopefully we've given our listeners, some food for thought, a better understanding of what AI is, how it works, both the opportunities and the challenges it presents.
I hope so. It's been a fascinating discussion, and I always love exploring these kind of complex topics, trying to make them, a bit more accessible.
Me too.
Okay.
It's just such a rapidly changing field. Who knows what the future holds? We'll definitely have to revisit this topic again in a few months, I reckon. There'll be a whole load of new developments to talk about.
Definitely. But for now, I think that's all we have time for on this deep dive into AI. Thanks for listening, and as always, keep those questions coming.